I was disturbed by this story about Emma Watson. And let's begin with the timing, because in the past week, Emma Watson gave a long interview reflecting on fame, fallibility, her strained relationship with JKRowling. She said she treasures Rowling while disagreeing with her on sex and gender. Crucially, she didn't declare a permanent retirement from acting, but she has said she's going to step back. She sort of left the door open. That matters because the public frame of "I'm retiring, be kind" is inaccurate. It's conciliatory. It's not a farewell. Rowling's reply on Twitter, on X, however, was scorching. She called Watson ignorant of how ignorant she is and linked that ignorance to wealth and insulation from real life, and accused Watson of pouring petrol on a fire during the 2020 to 2022 peak of threats against Rowling. She cited Watson's 2022 BAFTA line, "I'm here for all the witches," as a turning point, and she disclosed a one-line note from Watson that, in her telling, rang hollow. Rowling's response was graceless, strategically counterproductive, and unnecessarily personal. And here is why. Rowling could have restated her long-held policy, her claims about sex-based rights. Instead, she targeted Watson's person and biography, fame at 14, alleged distance from mixed-sex hospital wards, public bathrooms with security, as if privilege invalidates an opponent's standing. That is an ad hominem detour. It narrows the public square to those who suffer in a particular way, which is an odd gatekeeping for a writer who once insisted that ideas should win on merit. The posts do not advance the policy argument, they diminish it, and they diminish her, they diminish Rowling. Rowling's fear during the worst of the threats was real and serious, but fear and harm, however grave, do not grant a free pass to personalise and belittle people who have, frankly, helped to make Rowling famous. To say "I was hurt, so now I can be harsh" is understandable on human grounds, yet unwise on civic grounds. And if the point is to protect women in vulnerable settings, then modelling a way to disagree without contempt is part of the same protective ethos and part of the same ethic. To savage a younger woman simply because she disagrees with you is a sign of immaturity in itself, and a sign of nastiness in itself. Rowling ascribes to Watson a change of tack because condemnation of Rowling is less fashionable now. That is a claim that about motives she cannot know. It also ignores a simpler reading of Watson's interview, a fairly unfashionable attempt to say "I disagree, yet I will not erase you." We complain that discourse lacks bridge building. Then, when a young actor tries a rudimentary bridge, it's torched for impurity. That is not leadership. That is the behaviour of a shit. And Rowling hasn't been shy about the politics around sex and gender. Earlier this year, she publicly celebrated the UK Supreme Court's ruling that anchored sex in the Equality Act to biological sex, her much-quoted TERF VE Day. The broader climate has indeed shifted in her direction on several institutional fronts, yet when your position is gaining legal and cultural ground, the strong move is magnanimity, not triumphalism plus personal rancour. She is behaving like a child, and it's disreputable, it's disgusting. And this dispute is constantly framed as older, battle-hardened feminism versus soft millennial kindness. That is a caricature. Watson's line, "I can keep loving people I don't share the same opinion with," is not moral weakness, it's a credible civic aspiration. Likewise, older women who are gender critical are not cartoon villains. Once we abandon caricature, the space for good news grows. Rowling's post shrank that space, and she shows how inadequate she is. Some argue some argue that the cast owe Rowling a deference tax forever. Gratitude for opportunity is real, but it cuts both ways. Permanent intellectual vassalage isn't real. When artists separate the art from the author, they're not seizing a throne, they are doing what grown professionals do, articulating their own public ethics. And Rowling's claim that Watson and Radcliffe act as de facto spokespeople for a world she created misunderstands how authorship and performance work once their work enters the common realm and enters the world. Rowling's flourish that adults cannot cozy up to an activist movement that regularly calls for a friend's assassination and still claim that friend's love installs a purity test. If you support trans rights publicly, you are aligned with all excesses committed in the name of that cause. That logic is familiar across politics and always corrosive, and by the same logic, anyone who champions sex-based rights would be responsible for any cruelty posted by anonymous supporters. We should reject collective guilt as a debating tool, full stop. Did Watson's 2022 All the Witches line sting? Of course, it was a crisp public signal. But to elevate a quip to the status of betrayal is to mistake theatre for theology. A smart reply at the time would have been to restate principle without rancour or even to ignore it. Turning a throwaway line into a rupture helps no one. Imagine Rowling had posted this instead. Emma and I strongly disagree. I believe safeguarding women's single-sex spaces matters. She believes gender identity deserves broader accommodation. She says she still loves me. I appreciate the sentiment. We will not reconcile our views, but we can refrain from personal shots. That message would have protected Rowling's position and reputation at once. It would have denied oxygen to a news cycle that thrives on feud. Two norms would serve us here. Steel man, don't straw man. State your opponent's best argument fairly. If Watson says I will not cancel you, take that at face value before you criticise her policy views. Quarantine the personal, no more your privilege makes you unfit to speak. The ideas stand or fall without the biographical swipe. If we followed those norms, we would still argue hard about law, sport, prisons, refuges, and safeguarding, and we should. We would simply do so without treating people as disposable props in the culture war pageant. Rowling has behaved appallingly. As I say, she's behaved like she's behaved like a child. She's behaved like a selfish, privileged shit. But even shit can be cleaned away and tidied up. So I have hope for her. She once gave us a school where words mattered, where courage and care could coexist, and this week she has chosen contempt over care. It needs wiping up. It was unnecessary, it was ungracious. It also weakened her own case. If you believe the climate is turning your way, the correct register is restraint and care. If you believe disagreement can be principled, model it. If you believe words have power, choose better ones, especially when the easier ones would merely scorch the earth. So, the ball is in Rowling's court. The clean-up operation can begin, I suppose, but I think first she should signal an element of contrition, because what she did yesterday was unforgivable, really. But forgiveness can go beyond that red line. Forgiveness can reach out. I certainly will be very cautious about whether or not I read any more of her books, because I find her position, her personal position, to be deeply, deeply offensive. I'm all for people sharing differing views. I enjoy people sharing differing views, but this is an example of punching down, and it's deeply, deeply distasteful. Particularly, I say, when Rowling owes Emma Watson a great deal for popularising and personalising her book. Indeed, I would go so far as to say, out of the canon of Harry Potter books, The Prisoner of Azkaban is by far the best. But it has its faults, and the film of The Prisoner of Azkaban, and particularly Emma Watson's performance in that film, make it outstanding. And I think possibly J.K. Rowling should reflect.